I will marry the first man through this door." The words left Adelaide's mouth before she had decided to say them. They hung in the air of the morning room at Hartcliffe House, like a cup tipped off the edge of a table, too late to catch. Her stepmother's needlework stilled. Eliza, halfway through pouring chocolate, did not breathe. The clock above the mantel ticked once, twice, with the small porcelain insistence of a thing that did not understand what had just happened. "Don't be theatrical, Adelaide." The Countess set her hoop down with the care of a woman placing a weapon out of reach. "You are 25. Mr. Crane is a respectable man with a respectable income, and you will accept him on Friday because there is no one else." "There is anyone else," Adelaide said. She had been standing by the window when she spoke. She did not turn. The April light came through the muslin in long, pale columns. Her hand was in her pocket. Inside her pocket was her mother's silver thimble, and she was pressing the rim of it into the pad of her thumb hard enough to bruise. "Anyone, my lady. Any man at all. Send up the gardener. Send up the new curate. The first man through that door before I am made over to Mr. Crane like a pony at a country auction. I will have him. There. It is decided." Eliza had set the chocolate pot down at last. She said her sister's name in a small, pleased voice, and told her she could not say such things. Adelaide answered that she had said them. Eliza begged her to unsay them. Adelaide refused. The Countess rose. She was a tall, narrow woman with a face that had been beautiful at 20 and was severely handsome at 43. And she had the particular gift of speaking softly when she was angriest. She crossed the carpet and stopped a careful 3 feet from Adelaide's shoulder. "Listen to me," she said. "Mr. Crane will be here at 2:30. He will sit where Eliza is sitting now, and he will accept a cup of tea, and you will accept his hand, and we will all of us, child, finally be done with this. Your brother will keep his commission. Your sister will have her season. You will have a husband who does not require Hartcliffe to fund his hounds. We will close this house at Michaelmas, and your father will sleep at night for the first time in 2 years. That is what the next 40 minutes are for. Do you understand?" The thimble's rim cut the meat of Adelaide's thumb. She felt it without flinching. She turned at last, and her mouth was perfectly even, and her eyes were perfectly clear, and she said, "Send my father in. I will tell him myself what I have just told you, and you may stand in the corner and listen to it." "Adelaide, for the love of—" "The first man," Adelaide said. "Through that door, before 2:30. Whoever he is, my lady, I will have him." The door opened. It was not the gardener. It was not the curate. It was not Mr. Crane, who would not arrive for 43 minutes more. It was a tall man, in a travelling coat the colour of wet slate, and he had not yet removed his gloves, and the footman had not yet announced him because the footman had only just come up the stairs behind him, and was, in fact, in the act of opening his mouth. "His Grace the Duke of Berwyn," the footman said. The room froze. The Duke of Berwyn had hair the colour of dark ash, and eyes that had seen the room in one slow sweep before he had finished entering it. He was no more than 28. He was broad through the shoulders, in a way that the slate-grey coat could not soften. A man, Adelaide thought distantly, who had spent his youth lifting things heavier than himself. He was not laughing. He was not smiling. He had heard her. He had heard every word. She knew it in the way his gaze paused, just for an instant, at her hand still in her pocket. He removed one glove. He removed the other. He set them on the silver salver the footman held out. "Lady Hartcliffe." His voice was low and unhurried. "Forgive my arriving without announcement. Your butler said you were in. I had not understood you were in conversation." The Countess had gone the colour of bone. "Your Grace, Eliza, leave us. Adelaide will stay," Adelaide said. The Duke did not look at her. He looked at the Countess, and his face was a face that had decided something a long time ago, and was only now arriving at the decision's natural conclusion. "Madam," he said, "I am here on a matter of some delicacy concerning Lord Hartcliffe's western tenants. I will gladly come back at an hour more convenient. But I cannot help observing that you appear to be in the middle of a private discussion. May I withdraw?" "Yes," said the Countess. "No," said Adelaide. The Duke turned to her. He was, she discovered, not the man she had expected a duke to be. There was no condescension in the line of his mouth. There was no amusement at her trouble in his eyes. He looked at her with the steady, careful attention of a man who had walked into a room where something had broken and was deciding, without panic, whether the broken thing was a teacup or a person. "My lady," he said, "have I intruded?" "You have," Adelaide said. "Magnificently. But I asked you to." "I see. Did you hear what I said as you were coming up the stairs?" A small pause. "Then, I heard," he said, "that you intended to marry the first man through this door." "And what is your opinion of that intention, Your Grace?" He did not answer at once. He looked at her, not at the Countess, not at Eliza, not at the chocolate cooling in its pot, only at her. He looked at her face, then at the thumb she had withdrawn from her pocket, where a small bead of blood was forming on the pad. His expression did not change, but something in him steadied, the way a man's shoulders settle when he has decided to lift a heavy weight in a particular way and has just chosen the angle. "My opinion," he said, "is that I had better hear from your father before I form one." The Countess made a small, choked sound that was not quite a laugh. "But," the Duke went on, very gently, "if you would like to know whether I would refuse you, my lady, the answer is no. I would not." "Your Grace," the Countess began. "Lady Hartcliffe." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Send for your husband, please. There is now more than one matter to discuss." She sent for him. Lord Hartcliffe, when he arrived, was a thin man in a green coat who had aged 10 years in the last two, and looked it. He had brought brandy. He had also brought, by the rumpled hang of his cravat, a temper. "Adelaide," he said as soon as he came through the door, "what in God's name have you—" He stopped. He had seen the Duke. He greeted his Grace by title. The Duke answered with the Earl's name in a low, even voice. The Earl began to say something about his daughter, and got no further. The Duke, without raising his voice, told him that his daughter had made him an offer. The Earl looked at Adelaide. Adelaide met him across the carpet without lowering her chin. She felt, with a peculiar clarity, that she had not been looked at properly in this room since the year her mother died. Her father repeated the word offer, as if testing whether it could possibly bear what was being asked of it. The Duke clarified, quietly, that it was an offer of marriage, made in the presence of the Earl's wife and his second daughter. He had come up the stairs, he said, in time to hear it. He had thought at first that he had misheard. He had not. "Your Grace, my daughter is overwrought." "With respect, sir, your daughter is not overwrought. Your daughter is, by my count, the most composed person in this room, including myself." "Then what would you have me do?" "I would have you, Hartcliffe, send your wife and your second daughter from the room. I would then have you tell me what your daughter is being asked to consent to at 2:30 that has produced this state of affairs. And then I would like, with your permission, to speak privately with Lady Adelaide for 1/4 of an hour, after which I will give you my answer." "Your answer to her offer?" The Earl looked at the Countess. The Countess did not move. "Marianne," he said, in a voice that was not unkind but had nothing left in it. "Eliza, out, please." When they were alone, the Earl told the Duke about Mr. Crane. He did it badly, because he was a man who had been carrying it badly for a long time. He spoke of the mortgage at Hartcliffe. He spoke of his son's commission, which had not yet been paid for. He spoke of a debt to a man in Dover that had grown teeth. He did not look at his daughter while he spoke. The Duke did not look at the Earl. The Duke looked, the entire time, at the bookcase behind the Earl's left shoulder, as if extending the Earl the courtesy of not being seen. When the Earl had finished, the Duke said, "Thank you, sir. May I have the quarter of an hour?" "You may." The Earl left them. Adelaide had not sat down. She did not sit down now. The Duke crossed the carpet to her, not quickly, not slowly, and stopped at a distance proper to a stranger. "My lady," he said, "I will be brief. I came here this morning to ask your father whether he would receive me as a caller upon you. I had seen you, in February, at the subscription concert at Lady Brierly's. I did not contrive an introduction because the gentleman beside you appeared to be a relation, and I dislike intruding on family parties. I had intended to write to your father this week. I came today because the matter at the western boundary has become urgent, and I thought to combine the errands." He paused. "I am giving you, my lady, the full and unflattering history. I want no part in being mysterious to you." "Go on, your grace." "I am the 7th Duke of Berwyn, of 3 months' standing. My father's will— he was not, I should say, a man much given to leaving things tidy— contains a provision that I must marry within 18 months of inheriting. If I do not, the estate passes to a trust whose principal trustee is my second cousin, Lord Marston. Lord Marston is also a man about whom I will not pretend to be charitable. He is not a thief. He is something the law has not yet caught up with. He has informed me, in writing, that should the trust pass to him, he will not honour the annuity left to my father's eldest daughter, who is not the issue of his lawful marriage, but who has lived under his protection since she was 9 years old. Her name is Cassandra. She is 22. She has never lived anywhere else." She said the word sister back to him, gently, as if to be sure she had it. He confirmed it with the smallest movement of his head. She asked him how long he had. "Until midsummer," he said. She did the arithmetic aloud, 2 months, and he agreed, also aloud, as if the second saying made the figure no smaller. She studied him. He had not looked away while he spoke. He had not embellished. He had not asked for sympathy. He had told her what he had to do and why he had to do it, and he had told her with a kind of terrible plainness that left no room for disbelief. "You did not come here to marry me," she said. "I came here to court you. With the intention of marriage, yes. I will not lie about that. But court you, properly, with your knowledge and on terms agreeable to you both." "And now?" "Now," he said, "you have offered me your hand in front of 2 witnesses, and I have a sister whose roof depends on my marrying before the 24th of June. I will not pretend I am not relieved. But, my lady, I will not hold you to it. If you withdraw the offer, I withdraw any expectation. I will leave this room, and I will write to your father next week as I had originally intended, and I will take my chances with your goodwill at a slower pace. I do not need to be rescued by you. I want to be." The clock ticked. Adelaide thought, with a strange and detached clarity, of 3 things at once: the silver thimble in her pocket, her brother Henry, who would lose his commission tomorrow, and the way Mr. Crane had laughed last week at a dinner about a hunting dog he had shot for being slow. "Your Grace," she said, "if I marry you, will you let my brother keep his commission?" He answered without hesitation that he would. "Will you settle the Dover debt?" He answered again that he would. "Will you consent to a separate establishment for me at— I do not know yet— at one of your smaller properties, if at the end of the season we do not suit?" He considered this. "I would consent to a separate establishment if you required one. I would, however, prefer to be given a year first to demonstrate to you that you do not." She almost smiled. She did not let herself. The terms of her own life were being arranged across the space of a morning room at a speed she had not, 3/4 of an hour ago, believed possible. "Will you tell my stepmother, in this room, this afternoon, that the matter is settled?" "With pleasure." "Will you stand at my left when Mr. Crane arrives, and decline to leave?" He said he would. He did not embellish the agreement. He simply assented, the way a man assents to a thing he has already decided. "Will you?" she said, and her voice did, for the first time, do something. A small fault, a thread of something. "Will you tell me, plainly, why you accepted my offer instead of refusing it like a sensible man?" He looked at her for a long moment. The April light was full in the room now. She could see, at the corner of his mouth, a small crease that had not been there a quarter of an hour ago. The crease of a man who was about to say something that cost him to say. Then he said, "Because when I came through that door, I had the brief impression that something cruel was happening to you. I would have stayed in the room either way. The marriage is, for me, fortunate timing. Your willingness to make it is, for me, undeserved. But I came up those stairs already inclined to like you, my lady. I have not changed my mind in the last quarter of an hour." "You did not laugh," she said. He shook his head once, slowly. "Everyone laughs." "Forgive them," he said. "They have not been paying attention." She found she could not, just then, say anything at all. After the silence had gone on long enough to be noticed, she said his name, Berwin, then Theodore, as if testing the syllables in the room's air. He answered with "my lady," the way a man answers a bell. She told him, in plain words, that her name was Adelaide, and that if they were to be married in 2 months, he might use it. He said it back to her, once, carefully, as if it were a thing that had been handed to him over a counter, and that he intended to carry home without dropping. "Open the door, please, and let my father back in. And the Countess. I find I would like to see her face when you tell her." He opened the door. Mr. Crane arrived at 2:30. He was a wide, pink man with damp eyes and a habit of clicking his teeth before he spoke. He found, in the morning room of Hartcliffe House, the Earl, the Countess, Lady Eliza, Lady Adelaide, and the Duke of Berwin standing at her left in a posture, the Duke would have said, of mild attention. "Mr. Crane," said the Earl, who had had 3/4 of an hour to compose his face, and had used the time well. "I regret to inform you that the matter we had been discussing must be considered closed. My daughter is engaged to His Grace the Duke of Berwin." Mr. Crane's teeth clicked. "This is," he said. "This is preposterous." "It is, however," said the Duke, very quietly, "the case." Mr. Crane looked at Adelaide. Adelaide looked back. She did not smile, because she was a wrecker by inheritance and a wrecker by choice, and she did not require the small pleasure of smiling at a man who had once shot a slow hunting dog. "My lady," Mr. Crane said, "I had thought—" "Sir," said Adelaide, "I am sorry to have inconvenienced your afternoon. I trust the road back to town is in good repair?" He left. He left, in fact, so quickly that he forgot his hat. The footman, who had a long memory and was fond of Henry, neglected to remind him. "Adelaide," her father said, when Mr. Crane had been gone perhaps 30 seconds, I do not know what to—" "Tell Henry," Adelaide said. "Tell him at once. He is in the library trying to work out which of his mother's brooches he can sell." The Earl went. The Countess remained. The Countess looked at the Duke, then she looked at Adelaide. Then she looked, for a long moment, at the carpet at her feet, as if deciding whether the carpet had betrayed her. She offered her congratulations to His Grace in the formal phrasing the room demanded. The Duke accepted them, equally formally, with no warmth and no chill. Then she turned to Adelaide and asked, in a thinner voice, whether she might speak with her privately. Adelaide told her she might not. Not today. Perhaps in a fortnight. They would see. The Countess curtsied and left. When the door had closed, the Duke turned to her. There was, in his face, the small, inward look of a man who was registering, for the first time in a long time, that he had quite enjoyed something. "That was very satisfying," he said. "I did not expect to find such a depth of vindictiveness in myself." She allowed herself, finally, the smile she had been declining all morning. It came out smaller than she had expected, and a little crooked, as if it had been keeping itself in storage. "I did not, in fact, expect it of you either," she said. "It is your influence, I think. I have known you 4 hours. I shall be a brigand by Friday." The room had gone quiet around them in a particular way. The quiet of a place in which several arguments had just been concluded and were settling, like silt on the carpet. Somewhere downstairs, a door closed. The chocolate in the pot on the side table had gone cold, a thin, pale skin pulling across its surface. Adelaide's left knee, which she had not allowed herself to notice for nearly an hour, had begun very politely to shake. "Theo," she said, "I would like to sit down now, please." He brought her a chair. She sat. The thimble was still in her pocket. The rim had drawn the small, dark bead on her thumb that she had felt earlier and then forgotten. He did not touch her hand. He stood at her left, just as she had asked, and he did not leave. For a long moment Adelaide was aware of the room in pieces. The cooling chocolate. The clock above the mantel, which had ticked through her vow and through Mr. Crane's exit, and was now ticking through whatever came next. The cut hawthorn in the porcelain bowl on the side table, which Eliza had brought in that morning, and which had begun, in the warmth of the room, to release a soft, almost peppery scent. Theo's shadow falling across the carpet at her left. Her own breathing. Not, she discovered, especially fast. She had expected it to be fast. It was not. She had married, in the last hour, a man whose first name she had used for the first time about 90 seconds ago. She found that she was perfectly calm. She found, in fact, that she was something more troubling than calm. She was sure. The next morning, the engagement was in the papers. April had thrown out a clean, narrow blue sky over London, and the streets had filled with the particular hopeful traffic of a city that has decided to believe in spring after all. By noon, 3 modistes had written. By 4, a card had arrived from Lord Marston at Berkeley Square. A smooth, civil, 2-line congratulation that Adelaide read twice and found herself not liking. She handed the card to Theo across the breakfast table at Berwyn House, where she had been brought to meet his sister and where she had now stayed, with a chaperone, for the day. His cousin was in town, she observed. Theo, without lifting his eyes from the card, said yes. Marston had come up from Hampshire on Monday and kept a house in Mount Street for the season. Adelaide repeated the timing back to him. A card the morning after the engagement appeared. The breakfast room at Berwyn House faced east and was full, that morning, of pale, lemon-coloured light. The silver coffee pot caught it. The toast rack caught it. Theo, sitting in his shirt sleeves with the cuffs turned back at the wrist, caught it across his right hand, where a healed cut at the base of his thumb showed white against the brown skin. Adelaide had not, until that moment, looked properly at his hands. She did so now, and found they were the hands of a man who had, at some earlier and quieter point in his life, learned to handle a horse and a saw and a pen, with about the same care for each. They were not soft hands. They were, she thought, the kind of hands that had built a house once and kept it. The card from Lord Marston lay between them on the white cloth. The black ink had a careful, almost feminine slant. The seal was deep red, pressed unevenly, as if by a hand impatient to be done. For a long moment, Theo did not answer. He did not look at the card. He looked instead at the small bowl of cut narcissus on the windowsill, which had been arranged by Cassandra at first light and was leaning very gently toward the light. He was thinking the same thing, he told her at last. She said the obvious thing, that Marston knew. Theo answered that Marston knew what he could read in the Morning Post, could read what her name would mean to his position under the will, and could do arithmetic, as could his solicitor. She asked, in a steady voice, what he imagined the man would do. Several things, he said. Test the announcement. Look for impediment. Look for irregularity. And if he could find none, he would produce one, buy one, forge one, or find a witness who would swear to one. She set down her cup. Then we will have, she said, to be very married. As of June 24th at the latest, but sooner is better. How soon can it be done? He answered, after a small calculation, that with a special license the thing could be accomplished in a fortnight. The name of the country house came after a brief pause. He gave it as if handing her a key. Felmenden. We will go down on Tuesday, she said. We will be married on the Saturday of the second week. We will return to town the following Monday, and we will be in every room of the season for 1 month. We will be unmissable. We will be undeniable. By the time your cousin's solicitor finds anything, we will have been married for 30 days in front of the entire kingdom. He looked at her across the eggs and the toast and the silver coffee pot. He did not touch her hand. He did not need to. He did, however, set down his coffee, very deliberately, as if registering for the second time in 2 days that the woman opposite him was not, in fact, the kind of woman one met at most breakfast tables. I knew yesterday that I was lucky, he said. I am, this morning, beginning to understand the scale. Eat your toast, Your Grace. We have letters to write. Cassandra Ashcroft was 22, dark-haired, neither tall nor small, and was not one of those young women who try to make themselves beautiful in the morning. She had simply, as far as Adelaide could tell, been born that way, and had then been left in peace about it. She had her brother's grey eyes, and none of his stillness. She came into the music room at Berwin House with an ink stain on the heel of her hand and a sheaf of letters under her arm, and she stopped on the threshold and looked at Adelaide. You are the wrecker, she said. Cass, said the Duke, behind Adelaide's shoulder. It is meant kindly, Theo. Lady Adelaide, you are very welcome. Theo has spoken about you. So has the Times. The Times was less pleasant, and I thought you should know. What did the Times say? That you are of nervous temperament, and were turned down in your first season by Lord Halcombe's son. Lord Halcombe's son turned me down because I declined to make him an heir before the wedding. Ah, Cassandra said. Then we shall like each other. Theo, I have your post. Come and read it before luncheon, please. You have 3 things you cannot put off, and I will not have you put off 3 things. She handed him the sheaf. She did not curtsy. She had not, Adelaide observed, curtsied at the doorway either. She moved through this house like a daughter, not a guest. She moved through it, in fact, like the woman of the house. Theo, in his sister's presence, became visibly younger. He sat down on the piano bench with the post, said, Yes, Cass, in a voice that contained no irony, and began opening seals. Lady Adelaide, Cassandra said, will you walk with me? The garden is doing something with the hawthorn that I want a witness to, and Theo will not come because Theo does not understand hawthorn. Of course. In the garden, between the long, untidy rows of an April that was just beginning to turn warm, Cassandra Ashcroft put her arm through Adelaide's and walked her 3 turns of the path before she said anything at all. I will not ask you whether you love him, she said at last. It is none of my business, and the answer would not, in any case, be yes yet. So we shall not pretend. I will ask you instead one thing. Ask it. Did he tell you about me? He did. The first afternoon. Everything? Everything, I think. The will, Lord Marston, the cottage, yes. And you accepted him anyway? I had already accepted him, Cassandra. He was telling me the rest because he is incapable of not telling people the rest. I think it is a kind of disease. Cassandra laughed. It was a short, surprised, genuine laugh. The laugh of a woman who had not been expecting to be amused this morning. Yes, she said. He has it badly. Our father had it not at all. It will, I think, be the slow undoing of Theo, one careful confession at a time. Cassandra walked another half-turn of the path before she went on. Her free hand, Adelaide noticed, had a way of brushing the heads of the lavender as she passed. Not quite plucking, just consenting to be greeted by them. The gravel was the colour of bone in this April light. A blackbird was making, very stubbornly, the same three-note call from the yew hedge. Cassandra did not turn her head when she spoke again. Lady Adelaide. Adelaide, if I may. There is a thing I should like to say to you, and then I shall not say it again. Theo loves 3 people in the world. 2 of them are gone. The 3rd is me. He has never loved a woman in the way he is going to love you, because he has never been given the time to. He will, once he begins, be extremely bad at it. He will be silent at the wrong moments. He will give you practical things instead of romantic ones. He will solve your problems in the night without telling you he has solved them, because he believes that the solving is more useful than the telling. You will have to learn to read him as a man reads a difficult book. I am telling you because I should like, eventually, for him to be loved well, and I do not know how long it will be before he tells you any of this himself. Adelaide stopped walking. The path under their feet was a fine, pale gravel that had been raked at some recent point into careful parallel lines, and her boot heel had turned a small disorder into the pattern. She did not look at it. She looked at Cassandra. Why are you giving me this gift? Because you walked into our house yesterday afternoon and treated me as my brother's sister, and not as my brother's burden. Because the Times will say worse of you next week, and I want you on my side before it does. Because you are about to do something extremely difficult on a deadline, and you should not have to do it alone. Adelaide opened her mouth, found nothing immediately suitable to put into it, and closed it again. Cassandra did not let her recover. Do not thank me. Tell me what you need. I have access to everyone in this town who is worth having access to. I have spent 18 years being the kind of girl whom dowagers tell things to, because no one bothers to ask whether a clergyman's bastard daughter has any use for a secret. I have a great many secrets, Adelaide. They are at your disposal. Adelaide took her arm out of Cassandra's. She turned to face her. She did not, this time, hide her face. I have a brother, she said, called Henry. He is 18. He has a commission in the 10th that has not been paid for. His debts at school are not catastrophic, but they are real. He will, in 3 weeks, do something foolish to relieve my father of one of them. I do not yet know what. I've been afraid of it for a month. If you have the kind of friend who knows a captain in the 10th, and could see the commission paid, before Henry knows it has been paid, I would consider myself in your debt for the rest of my life. Cassandra did not blink. She accepted the request as another woman might have accepted the loan of a book. It is done before luncheon, Adelaide. Tell me his full name and the school. We will not speak of this again. Lord Marston called at Bowen House on the Tuesday before the wedding party left for Felmenden. He had not been invited. He came at 3 in the afternoon. He was a tall, beautifully dressed man of 41, with his cousin's grey eyes and none of his cousins quiet. A man who had spent his life being looked at and had developed the small mannerisms of someone who knew the looking was going on. He was received in the green drawing room. The Duke was there. Adelaide was there, by her own request. Cassandra was not. She had taken herself, with great deliberation, into the garden. The Duke had not asked her to. "Cousin," said Lord Marston. "Marston. And Lady Adelaide. May I say at once how very much pleasure it gives me to make your acquaintance under such happy circumstances." She allowed him the courtesy of a small inclination of her head. She did not allow him a smile. I had heard, of course, that my cousin was forming an attachment. I had not heard, until yesterday morning, that the attachment had been formed. I had not heard, until this morning, that the wedding is to take place on Saturday week. She confirmed the date without elaboration. She named the place without inviting him to comment upon it. She mentioned the special license as a matter of administrative record, the way one might mention the weather. He drew the small, careful breath of a man whose first 3 sallies had failed to land. How very efficient. The Duke said nothing. I shall not pretend, my lady, Lord Marston went on, to be unaware of the arithmetic. My cousin will have explained to you the terms of his late father's will. I am sure he has been candid. He is, when he chooses, a very candid man. May I ask whether he was as candid about his mother? Marston, the Duke said. I have asked the lady a question, cousin. I see no reason, my lord, Adelaide said, to be told about the late Duchess by a relative who did not know her. If his Grace wishes to speak about his mother, he will. If he does not, I am content. My lady, with respect, furthermore, she said, I observe that you arrived without a card, and at an hour which is not a calling hour. I observe that you have, since you sat down, made 3 remarks designed to test my composure. I observe that you have not yet asked after your cousin's sister, although she lives in this house, although you are, I believe, her godfather, and although it is to her cottage at Felmondon that you have already informed his Grace's solicitor you intend to lay claim. May I, my lord, save you the trouble of a 4th such remark by telling you what I know? Adelaide, said the Duke, very softly. Theo, a moment. My lord, I know that you intend to contest the will. I know that you have already approached 2 witnesses regarding my engagement to his Grace, that you have been told in both cases that there is nothing to be had, and that you are, today, here, attempting to find by personal observation what your solicitor could not find for you. I know that you wrote, last week, to a man in Dover who used to hold a debt of my father's. I know what you offered him. I know what he said in reply, because the man in Dover, my lord, is no longer my father's creditor. That debt was paid on Friday by a banker in Lombard Street, on instructions from Berwin House. There is no debt. There is no impediment. There is no irregularity. There is, my lord, only my marriage to your cousin on Saturday week, in the chapel at Felmondon, in the presence of his sister, my brother, and approximately 90 witnesses. Lord Marston had gone very still. You have, he said, been thorough. My lord, I am from a thorough family. We have had to be. Cousin, he turned to the Duke, I shall take my leave. You shall. Lady Adelaide, may I say, you may not, my lord. He left. When he had been gone 2 full minutes, and the door had closed twice, once after him and once after the footman, the Duke crossed the carpet to where Adelaide was sitting, knelt at the side of her chair as if examining her hem, and took her hand. He did not, she noticed, kneel like a suitor. He knelt like a man tightening a girth, with the unself-conscious purpose of a person doing something useful. You did not tell me about the Dover debt, she said. It seemed an unromantic thing to put in a letter. She looked down at the top of his head, the dark, ash-coloured hair, slightly disordered where the brim of his hat had pressed earlier in the day, and felt, for the first time since the morning room at Hartcliffe, the small, specific exhaustion of being safe. Cass told me you would do this, she said. She said you would solve things in the night without saying so. I did not believe her. I should have. I shall be better, eventually. Do not be better. I will simply have to get faster. He did not let go of her hand. The room was warm. The April afternoon was settling, outside the long windows, toward an early evening. The light coming through the glass had gone honey-coloured and was beginning, where it touched the gilded frame of the looking-glass, to turn quietly amber. She heard, very distantly, Cassandra in the garden talking to a gardener about hawthorn. She heard, much closer, her own pulse where Theo's thumb rested against the inside of her wrist. She heard, at the edge of her hearing, the small, particular sound a call makes when it shifts in the grate. The greyhound that had wandered in earlier and gone to sleep by the fire stretched, sighed without waking, and did not move. "On Saturday week," she said, "in the chapel at Felmenden, with your sister there, with my brother there, with approximately 90 witnesses." "Yes." "Will you tell me, the night before, only the night before, not now, what you have not yet told me about your mother?" "I will." He turned his face up to her then. His eyes were the colour of wet slate, the same colour as his coat had been when he walked through the morning room door at Hartcliffe House the week before, and there was nothing in them at all that was theatrical. "You did not come to Berwin House yesterday morning thinking you were rescuing me," he said. "I want, I think, to say so out loud. You came thinking you were saving your brother, and outwitting your stepmother, and perhaps, finding a way to like the man in front of you. 2 of those things have already happened. The third, I should very much like to assist with." "You may," she said, "assist with it." He did not kiss her. He lifted her hand to his mouth and pressed his lips, very briefly, to the small new scab on the pad of her thumb, where the rim of her mother's silver thimble had drawn blood the day before. Then he set her hand back in her lap, and he stood up, and he said, in a quite ordinary voice, "I shall ring for tea." They went down to Felmenden on the Tuesday. The country was at the precise moment of April, when the hedges had not yet committed to summer, but had given up entirely on winter. The hawthorn was a froth of white at the edges of the fields, and the wagons that they passed on the road were full of lambs that had not yet learned to dislike being looked at. Felmenden itself was a low, honey-coloured house on a slope above a river. It had the look of a place that had been loved by women for several generations. A kitchen garden in good order, a glass house that worked, a pair of greyhounds asleep on the gravel of the front court, who did not bother to rise as the carriage came up. Cassandra's cottage stood at the bottom of the south lawn, half hidden by a yew hedge, with smoke coming honestly from its chimney. Adelaide saw it through the carriage window, and felt something she did not have a name for tighten and then loosen in her chest. "That is yours," she said to Cassandra, who was sitting opposite her. Cassandra confirmed it with a small nod. The cottage had a low wall of stone laid up without mortar, and a strip of garden along the southern face where some early thing, a pulmonaria perhaps, was already in bloom. Adelaide, who had grown up in a house with 16 bedrooms and 3 drawing rooms and a billiard room that her father did not enter, looked at the small chimney with its honest grey smoke, and felt something very particular happen in the back of her throat. She began to say that the cottage was very... Cassandra cut her off, gently. "Adelaide, do not. We have 8 days. Let me do something useful with them, please." She did. She was, in those 8 days, a tactical commander dressed as a sister. She arranged the wedding breakfast, the order of carriages, the seating of 2 warring great-aunts, the hothouse roses, the music, the license, the chaplain. She handled Adelaide's mother's brooches, which Henry had not, in the end, sold. The tent's commission had been quietly paid 2 days before by a person whom Henry had not yet identified. She handled Adelaide's father, who arrived on the Thursday in a state of bewildered relief and required the entire visit to be addressed twice before he heard. She handled the Countess, who arrived on the Friday in a state of armoured politeness and was given, in her own room, a small posy of Lily of the Valley and a card written in Cassandra's own hand. "Welcome to Felmenden. Please do not make my brother regret marrying your daughter." The Countess, having read the card, was extraordinarily quiet for the rest of the visit. Theo, in those 8 days, was occupied with the things that could not be delegated. The settlements, the chapel, the small army of staff who had not been told, in many cases, that the Duke was getting married until they were also told that the Duke would like them to wear new livery on Saturday. He did not have, in those 8 days, much of Adelaide's company. They saw each other at breakfast and at dinner. They took, once, a long walk through the bluebell wood at the back of the house, during which they did not speak for nearly 20 minutes, and did not require the speech. On the Friday evening, after the Countess had gone to her room, Theo came to find Adelaide in the music room. She was at the pianoforte, not playing, sitting on the bench with her hands in her lap and the lid still down. He stopped 2 paces from the bench and waited until she looked up. "You asked me, in the green drawing room last week, if I would tell you about my mother on the night before the wedding," he said. "It is the night before the wedding. May I sit down?" She moved, by way of answer, an inch to the left on the bench, making the small, unmistakable space. He sat. He did not, this time, take her hand. The music room at Felmenden had 2 long sash windows on its western side, and the April evening had brought them an hour of the colour particular to that month, a yellow that was almost green at the horizon and almost red at the upper sash. The pianoforte was an old instrument, mahogany-cased and a little out of tune, with the keys yellowed at 1 octave and pristine at another. The candles had been lit, but not the lamps. Adelaide could smell beeswax and, very faintly, something like applewood from a fire that had been allowed to settle in the next room. He looked at the closed lid of the pianoforte for a long moment, and then he said, "My mother was my father's second wife. She married him knowing about Cassandra. Cassandra was 8 then. She was a clergyman's daughter, my mother, without money. She had been engaged once before, to a young man who was a junior clerk in the Foreign Office, and who was lost, of nothing dramatic, to a fever, the autumn before she met my father. My father was 42 when she married him. My mother was 26. I do not believe she ever loved my father. She loved Cassandra. She loved me. She kept this house running for 5 years while my father drank and gambled, and made the kind of will I am now governed by. She left us when I was 19, in this house, in the small bedroom at the top of the south stairs, where she had retired the previous spring with what we all called a chest cold, and what was, in the end, not. She did not interrupt. She watched him, and listened, and did not move her hands from her lap. "The reason I am telling you," he went on, "is that the room I grew up in is the room directly under hers. I knew, the entire spring of my 19th year, that she was leaving us. I knew it with the particular precision a son has when his mother is in the room above his and is coughing in a way that she had never coughed before. I did not say so to her. I did not say so to my father. I did not say so to Cassandra. I sat at the foot of her bed every evening for 4 months, and I read to her, and I held her hand, and I never once said, 'Mamma, I know.' I do not know whether she knew that I knew. I think she did. I think she did. And I think she let me protect her from her own knowledge of it. And I think it was the kindest thing I have ever done for any person. But it has shaped me, Adelaide. I am, in consequence, a man who solves things without naming them. I have been told this before. I have been told it by Cass. It is, I am informed, my chief flaw." When he had finished, he did not look at her. He looked instead at his own hands, which had folded themselves, while he was speaking, around each other in his lap. "I am telling you, Adelaide, because I do not want you to learn it tomorrow at breakfast. I am telling you because I would like to be a husband who tells you the things he has solved. I will, in all probability, fail at this. But I would like to begin tomorrow with the failure already on the table, and not behind it." She did not answer at once. She lifted the lid of the pianoforte. She placed her hand, very lightly, on the keys. She did not press. The middle C had a small chip on the edge of its ivory. She felt it against the pad of her thumb. She had stopped carrying her mother's silver thimble that afternoon, and had not yet replaced the small habit it had occupied in her pocket. Her hand felt, in a way she had not anticipated, oddly light. "Theodore," she said, "on Saturday morning at 10:30, in front of approximately 90 witnesses, in the chapel at Felmenden, I am going to say something to you. I have been working on what to say for a fortnight. I have not, so far, been satisfied with any of it. I shall now, I think, know what to say." "What will you say?" I shall say what I said in the morning room at Hartcliffe House the day we met. I shall say it to you again. With the door closed this time. With no one through it. With it meaning what I would like it to mean. He looked at her. She looked at him. The candle nearest to them on the pianoforte had begun, for some reason particular to candles in late April, to gutter very softly. He did not reach for her at once. He sat, instead, with his hands open on his knees, like a man waiting to be given a parcel he is not yet sure he is allowed. She did not, this time, withdraw her hand from his when he took it. She did not, this time, put the silver thimble back in her pocket. She had not, in fact, brought the thimble downstairs. She had left it on the dressing table upstairs, beside the small enamelled box that held her mother's engagement ring, which she would wear tomorrow, on the third finger of her right hand. I had not understood, he said, that this, what I am feeling, this, would arrive before the wedding. I had not made plans for it. Make them now. He kissed her, once, carefully, the way a man kisses a woman he is about to vow himself to in the morning, and does not want, on the morning, to feel that he is rushed. It was a chaste kiss, and a serious one. His hand went up to the side of her face, not gripping, only resting, as if to steady the moment in place. She felt the calluses at the base of his fingers. She felt, against her cheek, the faint, warm pulse at the inside of his wrist. When he drew back, neither of them moved for a long time. The room had gone, entirely, into the small evening. Outside, somewhere on the lawn, an owl had begun its small, regular question. "Theo," she said, "I love you. It was not in the schedule. I am sorry. I shall say it again tomorrow if you like. But I find I cannot have said it for the first time in front of 90 witnesses. I should have liked, the first time, for it to be the two of us and a closed pianoforte." He did not look surprised. He looked, instead, like a man whose long-held suspicion had just been agreeably confirmed. "I love you," he said. I had been waiting for the appropriate occasion. This was the appropriate occasion. "Yes," he said. "I see that now." They were married on the Saturday morning at 10:30 in the chapel at Felmenden, in the presence of his sister, her brother, her father, her stepmother, 90 acquaintances, and a single greyhound who had not been turned out and who slept through the ceremony at the foot of the chancel step. Lord Marston was not present. He had, the previous evening, been seen leaving for Hampshire. Adelaide said, when the moment came, what she had told Theo she would say. "I will marry the first man through this door." The chaplain paused. The chaplain had been told, the night before, to expect this. He recovered quickly. The witnesses, the ones who knew, smiled. The witnesses who did not know thought they had misheard. The ceremony continued. The vows were exchanged. The registry was signed. The greyhound did not stir. When the doors of the chapel opened afterwards, on a country April morning that had, since dawn, decided to be the warmest of the year so far, the Duke of Berwyn and the new Duchess of Berwyn walked out under a froth of hawthorn, and Cassandra was the first person on the chapel steps, and she did not curtsy, and Adelaide did not let her. 6 months later, in the morning room at Felmenden, not the morning room at Hartcliffe House, which had been let along with the rest of that house when Lord Hartcliffe finally permitted himself to retrench, Adelaide stood by the window with her hand in her pocket. Her mother's silver thimble was no longer in her pocket. The thimble lived now in a glazed box on the mantel of the music room, having been retired, by mutual agreement, to a place where it could be looked at and not pressed into thumbs. Her hand was in her pocket because she had developed, in the months since her marriage, a habit of putting her hand there when she was thinking. She was thinking, this morning, about a letter from Cassandra, who had gone for a fortnight into Hampshire to visit a friend, and who had written that she would, after all, like to remain there for a third week. Adelaide was deciding whether to mind. She had decided, in fact, that she did not mind. Cassandra had earned every fortnight she could spend in any county she chose. The door opened. Adelaide. Thea, what are you thinking? That I should very much like to know what you are about to put down on that table. You've been carrying it through 3 rooms. He put it down on the table. It was a small, enameled box. It was new. It had been, by the look of it, made in the previous fortnight. It was painted, on its lid, with a single sprig of hawthorn. Open it, he said. Inside the box was a small object, wrapped in a square of black silk. She unwrapped the silk. It was a silver thimble. Not her mother's. New. Plain. Heavier in the hand than the old one. The rim, she saw, had been deliberately rolled smooth, and the interior had been lined with a thin, pale leather, the color of old vellum. She turned it over in her palm. The maker's mark was a small, punched cross, set inside a very neat oval. Her thumb went, of its own habit, to the rim, and found it round and forgiving. "You will not, my lady, draw blood on this one," Theo said. "I had it made by a man in Bond Street who was, when I told him what I wanted, at first appalled, and then deeply professional. The rim is rolled, the interior is lined. If you press it into your thumb in the morning room of the next house in which a stepmother irritates you, it will not draw blood." She did not, for a moment, trust herself to speak. The October light came through the window of the morning room at Felmenden in a slow, slanting way that was different from April, but not, she thought, unrelated to it. The same kind of light, given another 6 months to think about itself. The hawthorn beyond the glass had gone into berry, small, dark red beads against the dark green. The greyhounds were not on the gravel. They were, since the wedding, allowed in the morning room, and one of them had, with great deliberation, gone to sleep on Theo's left foot. "I have not pressed a thimble into my thumb in 6 months, she said, when she had recovered her voice. "No, but, my lady, you might, and I would like you, when you do, to be safe." She closed her hand around the thimble. The metal warmed against her palm in a few seconds, the way only silver does, and she felt, quite without warning, a small, specific gratitude that came up from somewhere beneath the breastbone, the kind of gratitude that does not have a sentence ready for it, and must be paid in silence. "You solve things without naming them," she said. "I am attempting this morning to name one." She walked to him. She put her palm, with the thimble inside it, against his chest, where his heart beat steadily and unhurriedly under the wool of his coat. "I will marry the first man through this door," she said. "You already have." "Yes," she said. "I keep finding I am glad of it." She closed the lid of the small, enameled box with the hawthorn on it. She left it where it stood. She crossed the carpet to where her husband was standing, and she put her hand into his, and she did not, that morning, take it back. If you have ever walked into a room and discovered that you wanted to stay for reasons you did not have words for yet, tell me about the room in the comments. I should like to read about it. And if Adelaide and Theo's spring has warmed you, stay with us by the fire. There are more stories coming every week. Subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one.